Hello, this is Carrie from the Little House Cooking Club and Cookbook Divas, and I'm just going to make sure I'm in the right place. I'm streaming to the Little House Cookbook Club group on Facebook and also to Cookbook Divas over on YouTube if it's easier for you to watch it there. Happy February 1st. I can't believe I got online on time. I just took a shower. My hair's still wet. This is my pandemic dye job. Thank you, Feria. And I threw some makeup on for your own good, and I'm excited to get started with the Little House Cooking Club. Looking for my books that I threw in here. Aha! This is the edition that I'm using when I'm creating the syllabus and the reading assignment, but it also works for the other editions of the book because pretty much the foreword and some of the recipes were tweaked, but it's all the same schedule of reading, the same chapters. The only thing that the author said she added was a sourdough bread recipe. Raise your hand if you've been cooking a lot of baking a lot of sourdough bread during the pandemic. And she added Laura Ingalls Wilder's gingerbread recipe, which was never in any of the Little House books, she said, but Laura would write back to fans that wrote to her, and she would add that, which is super cool. So let's get started. Besides the two chapters that we're going to read this week in the Little House Cookbook, they're very short and there's not a lot of actual food cooking, so it'll be a gentle introduction. We should read both of the forewords too, and I'll probably read one at some point of this live chat. And if there's anybody who's super brave and would like to be on camera with me, drop a note in the comments over on the StreamYard, and I can send you an invitation and you can be on camera with me to chat about this. So we're going to read chapter 1, Food in the Little Houses. It's really short, really interesting. There's a picture of cornbread. I definitely want to make some cornbread. The famous picture of Mary churning the butter. And we'll read chapter 2, The Cook's Domain. And part of our homework will be learning about ancient 1870s cooktops and iron stoves and cooking over the fire, which I've had to do before, because I live in the outskirts of Seattle, kind of out in the boonies in the suburbs. And about every 3 or 4 years, we have a spectacular storm and the power goes out for 7 to 10 days. So I end up cooking over a fire pit since all the hotels fill up. Next week, we'll start working on chapter 3, Staples from the Country Store. This is where we start getting into some cooking. And these are all pretty short. There's more cornbread. She's trying to kill me. This looks so good. I did have lunch before I got on camera. I am personally a vegetarian, so I'm going to be skipping recipes like fried salt pork with gravy drippings. But if you guys want to cook that and show us a picture and talk about it in the group, that would be awesome. Along with our textbook, the Little House Cookbook, this week, we're going to be exploring Little House in the Big Woods, the food sections of it. This is my newer edition that I got so I don't beat up my old one, but I wanted to show you and I promptly lost it in a pile of junk. Oh, here it is. Who else had the yellow series of Harper Trophy books when you were a little girl in, say, the 1970s? But I have a question for you guys. Did anybody have the blue? They seem pretty identical. They're both Harper Trophy. They're both 70s. But one of the series of books was blue, and I would have preferred that because I don't like the color yellow. Anyway, this is my cherished copy, and I believe, there's my little baby signature when I was like in 3rd grade. I believe I colored some of the pictures. Yep, because I thought they were boring in black and white, so I colored them. And I wasn't very good at coloring, obviously. Oh, well, and I don't have a little girl to pass these down to, so someday they'll end up in a used bookstore, and someone will go, wow, what idiot colored all these pictures? Anyway, we don't have to reread through Little House in the Big Woods unless you feel like it, but I'm going to go through and pull out the food-related parts, and here's Mary, and I gave her very golden hair. We'll visit the types of foods they were eating, and I have been very, very amused by looking at the weather in Pepin, Wisconsin, where Laura Ingalls Wilder was born. The weather is horrible right now. It's really cold. Not necessarily... Yep. Not necessarily. And I'm just looking for comments because I can't see them on StreamYard. And anybody have any questions? I'm looking for the comments so that I can check out where they would be. I'm using an app called StreamYard. And I'm pretty familiar with it, but it's my first time really using it in a group instead of on a page. And by the way, did anybody wonder why the Little House Cooking Club is in a Facebook group? I'd like to let you know that when I post things to Cookbook Divas on the page, Facebook hardly ever shows any of my posts to any of the 11,000 fans. But if you click like or comment on a post, especially in groups, Facebook learns, oh, you want to see more from this person. Okay, cool. And they'll show you more of my posts. So I don't need you to be like, I don't need any adoration, but when you click like on something I post, you'll see more of it. And feel free to jump in the comments. There you go, Susan. Thank you. Our first comment came through. Woohoo! Okay. Little House in the Big Woods. I will go through that later today. And the reading schedule this week, super light. Not too worried about it. And I'm going to, in a few minutes, read through the forwards of this book really carefully, quickly, for those of you that don't have it. But now I want to show off some of my collection. My Little House Book of Family, not really related to the cookbook, but it's so cute. And I liked to use these to get my nieces and nephews started on Little House on the Prairie books and addicted to them when they were too little to sit through and listen to the chapters and chapters in the bigger book. This is my favorite page because I'm an aunt, not a mother. And this is Aunt Dosha. And it's beautiful illustrations. I love it. And there's Grandma. And what are we doing in Little House in the Big Woods? They are making maple syrup out of trees. Now I have a maple tree in my front yard, but I'm pretty sure it's the wrong kind of maple, and I can't run over and tap it and get some sugar. Summertime in the Big Woods is a super cute book. Again, it's good for 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds that just can't sit through. Look at these beautiful illustrations. They can't sit through the big one yet. Yep. And, oh, here is Honeycomb. So I think this week we will be making likely cornbread and pancakes and, who has this? I would love to hear if anybody owns this little baby version of my Little House cookbook. Susan says she read all the books as a girl and read some of the books to her students when she taught at an elementary school. She's passing on her love of Little House to her granddaughter now. Oh, I love it. Let's take a quick look at this my first Little House books. Some of these are hard to get a hold of on Amazon because everyone bought them and they need to reprint them. It starts off, once upon a time, a little girl named Laura Ingalls traveled across America in a covered wagon with her pa, her ma, her big sister Mary, and her little sisters Carrie and Grace. And the first recipe is for pancakes. Yay! And breakfast sausage balls. I would make them with vegetarian sausage, so it's not going to be very authentic. Creamy oatmeal. Easy enough to follow that actual little kids could actually cook out of this cookbook. I'm excited. Strawberry jam. I forgot I'd owned this. Homemade butter. I have made homemade butter before. I made it in a cocktail shaker. And I put herbs in it. It was very good, and my arm got very sore. Butter and jam sandwiches. Popcorn and milk. That's not a combo I've done before. Oh. Buttermilk cornbread. I'm so hungry for cornbread right now. Laura's Little Maple Cakes. Anybody adventurous enough to try making those? By the way, there's a YouTube video where a lady makes maple syrup and puts it in the snow, just like in Little House in the Big Woods. And I will find that and link it to the group today. Ma's Best Butter Cookies. Okay. And the other books I wanted to show you really quick before I go read the foreword of the Little House cookbook. Inside Laura's Little House, the Little House in the Prairie Treasury. And it is gorgeous illustrations by Garth Williams and Kathy Kelly, because they had to kind of add some more because Garth isn't here to draw them anymore. Really nice introduction. So Laura's birthday just happens to be February 7, and I didn't time our cooking club in February because of her birthday. It's just a happy coincidence. So I'd love to invite you to join us in a Facebook room on her birthday. February 7 that's Super Bowl Sunday. Well, I don't watch the Super Bowl, so I am going to throw a Laura birthday party, and I'm happy to have you join us. Here's a dumplings recipe. Interesting. And some of Pa's music and Ma's Jackrabbit stew. Are any of us going to be cooking jackrabbit this month? I will not judge you if you want to do that. I just don't know anything about it. Anyway, really cool book. Inside Laura's Little House. I think I just ordered it from my library and it's coming because I forgot I owned it. I'm going to cancel it so someone else can get it. And this is really silly and has nothing to do with the cookbook, but these are my Little House sticker book and paper dolls. And I play with them and I don't let my nieces and nephews touch them because they're mine. They're super fun. All right, let's get into the Little House cookbook. And does anybody have any questions before I start jumping in here? Okay, I'm old, so I'm going to put on my readers. I just reread both introductions from 2020 or 2018 when this book came out and from 1979. They're a little bit different. Yeah, 1979. And it keeps getting revised, so there's an excerpt to the third edition too. So I thought I would start off with the first foreword. Barbara M. Walker writes, "Our family's involvement with Laura and her food goes back to our first reading of Little House in the Big Woods, when I found myself making pancake men with my then 4-year-old daughter, Anna. Laura Ingalls Wilder's way of describing her pioneer childhood seemed to compel participation. I know, it makes me want to go cook and garden. Maybe not clean, though. Perhaps her native gift of observation and description was sharpened when she became the eyes for her blind sister, Mary. As time went by and Anna read and reread the series, we somehow acquired a coffee grinder in order to make long winter bread. We experimented with sourdough starter and we tried our hands at drying blackberries. From other mothers, I learned that our impulses were far from unique. One mother even advised me to skip Farmer Boy if you don't want to get into that ice cream making mess. In fact, we skipped nothing. If the results were not always rewarding, the process was, and that's partly the reason for this book. Cooking was for Laura a social experience and an apprenticeship. By cooking with her elders, she learned something about food, something about work, and something about human communion. Cooking remains one of the few essential household activities that adults and children, or older and younger children, can share in modern urban life. This book is a gesture of sharing. We hope it will be used by people working together. Cooking for Laura was often pleasurable, but it was never busy work or child's play. Her food was too hard to come by. Eventually, I began looking for authentic recipes for dishes merely sketched or mentioned in the Little House books. The search led to other writings of Laura Wilder, her daughter Rose, and their biographies, and then on to sources of the period, pioneer diaries, local recipe collections, and cookbooks by professional authors. Always, I have worked from the assumption that even in the fanciful Farmer Boy, the details that illumine the fictional storyline are true. The recipes in this collection use as points of departure quotations from HarperCollins' uniform edition of the Little House books. Because food materials and kitchen equipment have changed so much since Laura's childhood, the finished recipes naturally involve compromises. I've transposed some of Ma's fireplace cookery to the stove and introduced precise measurements for all ingredients as well as 20th century temperature measurements. I was wondering about that. Not without a sigh over the loss that has occurred in our sensory powers. I have tried to remain faithful to an era that had neither baking powder nor the process of pasteurization. I have steadfastly refused to spike the sourdough starter with modern dry yeast. Yet I have easily conceded to using store-bought trout and strawberries. These are clearly biases at work, and readers will find others, along with the inevitable anachronisms. I hope they will take time to inform me of my lapses. Not all dishes included here will be greeted with enthusiasm at the table, especially not by this vegetarian. Some are admittedly historic rather than taste sensations, but all are revealing in one way or another. Taken together, they turn out to be a wonderful way to rediscover basic connections, links that are often obscured in the complex modern world. By this, I mean connections among the food on the table, the grain in the field, and the cow in the pasture, between the food on the table and the sweat of someone's brow, between the winter and dried apples, the summer and tomatoes, the autumn and fresh sausage, between the labors of the pioneers and the abundance we enjoy today, between children and their elders, between the preparation of a meal and the experience of love. Now, I don't want to bore anybody with the first foreword, the most updated one, so read that on your own. But there was something in the highlights that really I thought was pretty cool. It was designed to help young Little House readers understand the sources of the food they eat and to experience the effort that went into sustaining life on a hardworking dairy farm and on the prairie. Those who follow the steps closely will find the results especially rewarding if, like Laura and Almanzo, they come to the table hungry. Yay! That is our forward, and we're going to work our way through the book over the next month. And we'll revisit this. We'll be revisiting all of the food scenes. I do struggle with the one where they're blowing up the pig's bladder and going into detail with all of the making of the meats, and but they used every part of it and they didn't waste it. I love that. So we haven't heard from quite everybody. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to say hello and say something. And I wanted to see if you all knew about our other cooking club that we're doing this month over in another group, Betty Crocker 101. Of course, it won't be of interest to just everybody. The other thing we're going to do in March is Julia Child 101, if anybody's interested. I'm not a Julia Child expert, so I'm going to be reading along with everybody else and learning too. And here's my other vintage edition of the Little House Cookbook, a little glossy because of my camera lighting. Love it. I'm not working out of this one because it's older and I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up, so I'm using my modern one that I can replace if I get the pages dirty. But it's basically the same thing, just no color pictures of the food, which is fine. And there's all the good old Garth Williams illustrations. And I'm really glad I don't have to do anything with hay for a living. It looks very sweaty and painful, and I don't have to milk cows, but I appreciate that people do because I love butter and sour cream so much. I want to make sure I remembered everything I wanted to talk about. Our live chats are scheduled as they're convenient for me to host them. It's not going to work for everybody's work schedule or time zone, etc. If you have experience hosting online chats and you have access to StreamYard or a way to stream into our group, feel free to volunteer, or I can set up a Facebook room for you and you can host it and go in there when I can't be there because I have to work and run all my clubs. That would be awesome. I love volunteers. Woohoo! And I would especially love to hear from our people that live in Minnesota, Kansas, Wisconsin, Mankato. I know we have somebody from Mankato here. People that live nearby the original home sites of Laura and you've been to the museum. I would love to hear from you and have you participate more fully. Yay! So I am trying to remember what else I wanted to chat about. We did the cookbooks. We did a little quick go through on the children's books. We don't have a lot of cooking to do this week. We're just going to kind of get geared up, get into it. I'm going to be posting other people's Laura Ingalls Wilder, Big Little House cooking, cookbook recipes, YouTube videos, everything that I've found. And most importantly, if reading through this cookbook is not enough for you and if you have a little extra time, I'm posting a syllabus later today with all of the articles and links and videos that I found last time I taught this class a couple years ago over at Lovely Living University. I'm going to update it and freshen it. There's some great articles and it really delves a lot deeper than some of us have time for into Laura Ingalls Wilder's real life and some of the, not the darker parts, but some of the realities of them almost starving to death during the long winter. So catch up with the reading. Stay tuned for the syllabus. I'll post it on our website at cookbookdivas.com. If you go to the top, there's a little pull down that says February Little House Cooking Club, etc. I'll keep it there. I'll post it in the group and can't wait to get to know you and explore. And Christina's book just came. Yay! I'm glad there's so many eager cooks here. Did I mention that I do not currently have a kitchen sink and I kind of have a destroyed kitchen? We had a little plumbing leak and mold and the kitchen got demolished, but I do have a stove and an oven and a refrigerator. And I was feeling sorry for myself because I don't have a sink, but I'm thinking, Ma didn't have any of those. She didn't have running water. She's pulling the water in buckets and cooking over a fire. So why am I bitching about not having a kitchen sink with a disposal and at least I have a fridge, microwave, oven, and stove, and toaster. So thanks for joining. I'm so glad that everybody's so excited. I'm going to try and keep this chat brief. And for those of you that weren't able to watch it live, you're rewatching it. And if you've watched along this far, I'm very impressed. Thank you so much. Bye.